The moment my company commander realized an entire year's worth of military records had vanished, the color drained from his face. This was just days before a massive inspection that could determine whether he got promoted or humiliated in front of his superiors. And the craziest part? Just weeks earlier, that same commander had knowingly left me with an $800 bill after my barracks room was broken into and my military gear was stolen. He thought he could throw me under the bus and walk away. He was wrong, because what happened next left everyone speechless. And if you're watching this, smash that like button right now, because this revenge story gets absolutely wild. Back in 1984, I was a young Army sergeant counting down the days until I could finally leave military service and head back to college. I wasn't rich. Far from it. Like most junior enlisted soldiers, every paycheck mattered. I had plans. Tuition, books, rent, food. The money I had saved was supposed to help me survive while I transitioned back to civilian life. Then one weekend changed everything. I had gone away on a 4-day pass. Nothing unusual, just a short break before return to base. When I got back to my barracks room, something immediately felt wrong. The door looked strange. The lock was damaged. At first, I thought maybe maintenance had been working on it. Then I stepped inside. My stomach dropped. My military equipment was gone. My helmet, my field gear, my web belt, my ammunition carriers, my backpack, everything. I stood there frozen. The room felt empty, violated, like someone had reached into my life and stolen months of hard-earned money. I checked every corner, every drawer, every locker. Nothing. The thief had cleaned me out. Then I noticed the tool marks around the lock. The door had been forced open. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a misplaced item. Someone had broken into my room and robbed me. I immediately reported it. My platoon sergeant looked furious. My first sergeant looked even angrier. They both agreed. This was clearly a criminal matter. Their advice was simple. Call the military police. File a report. Start an investigation. Problem solved. Or at least that's what I thought. A few hours later, I got called into the company commander's office. The company commander, RCO, outranked everyone in our company. Technically, his word was law. I walked into his office expecting support. Instead, I got something else. He closed the door, folded his arms, and looked irritated, not concerned, not sympathetic, irritated, as if I was causing him a problem. Then he said something I'll never forget. He didn't want me reporting the break-in to the military police. At first, I thought I misunderstood him. A crime had been committed. Why wouldn't he want police involved? Then he explained. If the military police investigated, the incident would appear in higher headquarters reports. Division leadership would see it, and that would make our company look bad. More importantly, it would make him look bad. I remember staring at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. The man was more concerned about his image than the fact that one of his soldiers had been robbed. I tried explaining how much equipment had been stolen. The replacement cost was enormous, nearly a month's pay. A month's pay for a young soldier preparing to leave the army. That wasn't a minor inconvenience. That was financial disaster. But the commander waved it off. He told me not to worry. Instead of filing a police report, I should submit something called a report of survey. According to him, the army would reimburse me. The stolen gear would be replaced. I wouldn't owe a penny. Problem solved. Or so he claimed. I didn't trust him completely. But he was a commander. He was giving me a direct order. What was I supposed to do? So I followed instructions. I filled out the paperwork, submitted everything, and waited. Weeks passed. Then the decision arrived. Denied. Completely denied. No reimbursement. No replacement. No assistance. Nothing. I remember reading the paperwork over and over, certain there had to be a mistake. There wasn't, because no police report existed. There was no official criminal investigation, no supporting documentation. As far as the Army bureaucracy was concerned, my equipment had simply disappeared, which meant I was responsible. I would have to pay for everything myself. My chest felt tight. I could barely believe it. $800 in 1984 was a huge amount of money. It might as well have been a fortune. I was about to leave the service. I needed every dollar I had, and now it was gone. Not because of something I did, not because I was careless, but because I had obeyed an order. An order given by a commander who cared more about protecting his reputation than protecting his soldiers. I marched back into his office. I expected outrage, an apology, some effort to fix the situation. Instead, he shrugged, actually shrugged. Then he told me it was a tough break. A tough break. That's what he called it. After ordering me not to contact the military police. After convincing me to follow his plan. After leaving me with a bill that could wipe out my savings. I walked out of that office absolutely furious. But what I didn't know at the time was that karma was already quietly setting the stage. Because just 1 week earlier, the same commander had made another decision. A decision that would come back to haunt him. And it all started during one of the most important military evaluations our company had ever faced. The timing couldn't have been more ironic. While I was fighting to recover from the theft of my equipment, our company was preparing for a major nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare evaluation. That was my specialty. I knew the procedures inside and out. Normally, an evaluation like this would be led by the company commander. After all, that's literally what commanders are supposed to do. Lead, make decisions, take responsibility. But when the day arrived, our commander decided he'd rather watch than participate. And somehow, that responsibility landed on me. A junior sergeant, not an officer, not a commander, a sergeant. Suddenly, I found myself directing an entire armored company of roughly 120 soldiers. Think about that for a second. I wasn't just leading enlisted troops. I was giving directions to lieutenants, managing vehicle movements, coordinating security, organizing decontamination procedures, making decisions that would normally be handled by people several ranks above me, and all while a captain from division headquarters stood there evaluating everything we did. No pressure, right? Inside, I was nervous, terrified, honestly. One mistake could ruin the entire exercise. One wrong decision could make me look incompetent in front of everyone. But there wasn't time to panic. So I focused, step by step, order by order. We moved the company nearly 5 miles to the staging area. We secured the site, established defensive positions, processed personnel, decontaminated equipment, verified operational readiness. The whole thing ran surprisingly smoothly. Even the senior leaders seemed impressed. I could see it in their faces. Several lieutenants kept looking toward our commander, almost expecting him to finally step in and take charge. He never did. He just observed. Meanwhile, I kept working, hour after hour, until finally the exercise ended. The division captain approached us for the debriefing. Everyone gathered around. Soldiers, NCOs, officers, the entire company. The captain congratulated me publicly. He said I had done an excellent job. That felt good, not because I needed praise, but because I'd been carrying responsibilities way above my pay grade, and we'd succeeded. Then things got awkward, very awkward. The captain started explaining the next phase of operations. As he talked, I realized something was wrong, very wrong. He was giving incorrect information, information that in a real combat situation could potentially get soldiers killed. My stomach tightened. I had a choice. Stay quiet and protect his ego, or speak up and protect the soldiers. For me, there wasn't really a choice. So as respectfully as possible, I raised the issue. No attitude, no sarcasm, no embarrassment, just a professional correction. The room went silent. The captain froze. For a split second, you could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Then he realized I was right. And everyone knew it. The correction wasn't dramatic, but the damage to his pride clearly was. You know those moments when someone smiles but their eyes tell a completely different story? That was him. He thanked me, acted professional, but I could tell he was furious. An enlisted soldier had corrected him in front of an entire company. And some people never forget being embarrassed. The debriefing ended shortly afterward. I headed toward my armored vehicle. There was still one final task left. A radio call to headquarters confirming that our company had completed decontamination procedures and was operational again. This call was important. It officially completed part of the evaluation. I was just about to pick up the radio when I heard footsteps behind me. It was a division captain. He'd followed me away from the group. "Where you headed?" he asked. I explained I was about to make the required radio report. He stopped me. "No need," he said. "Just tell me what you would report." I hesitated, but he outranked me by a lot. So I told him exactly what I would have transmitted. He nodded, then smiled. "Good. Your unit passed." That was it. Conversation over. Simple, or so I thought. What I didn't realize was that my first sergeant had overheard the entire exchange, and that detail would become incredibly important later, because just a few days after learning I would have to personally pay for all my stolen equipment, another bombshell dropped. I got called into the commander's office again. Only this time, the atmosphere was completely different. The commander looked stressed. Really stressed. My first sergeant was there too. Neither one looked happy. The commander got straight to the point. The company had failed the evaluation. Failed. I blinked. Surely that couldn't be right. The exercise had gone smoothly. The evaluators had congratulated us. What happened? Then he explained. According to division headquarters, the required radio transmission had never been made. Without that transmission, the evaluation wasn't complete. Without completion, the company failed. And because I had been responsible for making the call, guess who got blamed? Me. At that moment, everything clicked. The captain, the correction, the embarrassment, the private conversation, his sudden instruction not to make the radio call, the missing transmission. It all fit together. He had set me up, or at the very least, he had knowingly allowed me to take the fall. And honestly, I should have been furious. I should have defended myself. I should have immediately explained exactly what happened. I should have told the commander that the division captain personally instructed me not to make the call. But then something interesting happened. I looked at the commander sitting across from me. The same commander who had ordered me not to report the theft. The same commander who had abandoned me financially. The same commander who had shrugged and called it a tough break. And for the first time, I realized something. I didn't actually owe him anything. Not my loyalty. Not my protection. Not my help. Nothing. So I stayed quiet. And after I left the office, my first sergeant pulled me aside. What he told me next changed everything. As soon as we stepped outside the commander's office, my first sergeant looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. Then he lowered his voice. "You know," he said, "I heard that captain tell you not to make a radio call." I stopped walking. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he continued, "And I think you should keep your mouth shut." That wasn't what I expected. Not even close. I thought he was about to encourage me to clear my name. Instead, he was telling me to let the commander take the hit. I must have looked confused because he gave a small smile. Then he said something I never forgot. "Our commander is going to get people killed one day." Those words hung in the air. Heavy, cold, honest. This wasn't some disgruntled soldier complaining about a strict boss. This was the most respected senior, enlisted leader in the company. A man who had spent years leading soldiers. A man who rarely spoke badly about anyone. And he genuinely believed our commander was dangerous. The first sergeant shook his head. "He left you hanging on the theft. He left you hanging on this evaluation. Let him deal with the consequences." Then he walked away. And for the first time since my equipment had been stolen, I felt something strange. Not anger, not frustration, anticipation. Because karma had finally started collecting its debt. Over the next couple of weeks, our commander somehow became even more unpopular, which was impressive, considering almost nobody liked him already. The final straw came when one of our soldiers got seriously sick. Instead of showing concern, the commander treated him horribly. The story spread to the company like wildfire. People were furious. Soldiers who had previously tolerated him now openly despised him. Morale dropped even lower. And everywhere I went, I heard the same thing. Nobody trusted him. Nobody respected him. Nobody wanted to follow him. Meanwhile, I was busy out processing from the army. I was only days away from receiving my honorable discharge. My military career was almost over. Then something unexpected happened. One afternoon, our supplies sergeant asked me to stop by. Now, if you've never served, the supplies sergeant is basically the guardian of all military equipment. And this particular supplies sergeant was retiring. He had seen everything, done everything. And unlike our commander, he actually cared about soldiers. When I arrived, he closed the door behind me. Then he looked me straight in the eye. I heard what happened with your stolen equipment. I nodded. His jaw tightened. I also heard how the commander handled it. For several seconds, he just shook his head. Then he said something that caught me completely off guard. I want to help. I wasn't sure what he meant. Then he reached into his pocket and handed me a set of keys, the supply room keys. I stared at them, then stared back at him. He smiled, not a big smile, just enough to let me know he was serious. You see, before retiring, he had already transferred accountability for the supply room inventory. The commander had officially signed for everything inside. Every helmet, every backpack, every piece of field gear, every item. If something disappeared now, guess who was financially responsible? The commander, not the retiring supplies sergeant. The commander, the same commander who had left me with an $800 problem. The supplies sergeant shrugged. You need replacement equipment. Take what you need. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He even apologized that some of the items weren't available, meaning I'd still have to pay a few $100s out of pocket, but nowhere near the amount I would have otherwise. Then, just as I thought the conversation was over, he casually mentioned something else, something far more interesting. The company's backup training records, weapons qualifications, physical fitness testing records, inspection documentation, all the paperwork higher headquarters cared about, all the paperwork required for upcoming inspections, all the paperwork that could make or break a commander's career. The supplies sergeant explained exactly where everything was stored, and then he left me alone with that information. No instructions, no suggestions, nothing, just information. A few days later, disaster struck, at least for one particular commander. The company was preparing for a major inspection by higher headquarters. This inspection was a big deal. Promotions depended on it. Reputations depended on it. Careers depended on it. Then someone discovered a problem. A huge problem. An unbelievably expensive problem. An entire year's worth of training records had disappeared. Gone. Weapons qualification records. Backup records. Supporting documents. Even electronic files. Missing. Completely wiped out. Panic spread immediately. People searched everywhere. Desks, file cabinets, storage rooms, computers, nothing. The records were simply gone. And because they were gone, headquarters couldn't verify that soldiers had completed mandatory training requirements, which meant the company had to do everything again. Everything. The physical fitness tests, the weapons qualifications, the machine gun certifications, the grenade qualifications, the cannon training, all of it from scratch, thousands upon thousands of dollars in wasted resources, endless hours of extra work, and one commander standing in front of his superiors trying to explain how an entire year's worth of records had mysteriously vanished. From what I heard later, those conversations were not pleasant. Not pleasant at all. The funniest part? The soldiers loved it. Seriously, most of them thought it was fantastic. Instead of routine duties, they got to spend days firing weapons, running training exercises, and blowing through ammunition supplies. For them, it was basically an unexpected vacation. For the commander, a nightmare. Exactly the kind of nightmare he'd forced onto me when he chose his reputation over doing the right thing. Then my final day arrived. My last formation. My last morning in uniform. My last few hours as a soldier. The company was gathered outside preparing for make-up physical fitness tests. Additional weapons qualifications were scheduled throughout the week. Everyone was talking about the missing records. Everyone. As I stood there, my first sergeant walked over. He looked at me for a moment. Then he started laughing. Not a loud laugh. More like someone remembering their favorite joke. Finally, he shook his head. "You know," he said, "that disappearing record stunt is the best ETS prank I've ever seen." I kept a perfectly straight face. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, First Sergeant." He laughed even harder. Then he winked, actually winked, before extending his hand. "You were a good soldier." I shook his hand. "Thank you, First Sergeant. I'll miss having you around." Then he wished me luck. And just like that, my Army career was over. I walked away with my honorable discharge, my replacement equipment, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes karma doesn't arrive with flashing lights and dramatic speeches. Sometimes karma arrives quietly, in a missing file, a failed evaluation, a ruined inspection, and a commander finally discovering what it feels like when someone else's career matters more than yours. The lesson? When leaders abuse their authority and sacrifice the people they're supposed to protect, they eventually lose the trust that keeps them standing. And once that trust is gone, karma has a funny way of finding the cracks. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't getting even. It's simply letting someone experience the consequences of their own choices. If this story gave you goosebumps, smash that like button and subscribe for daily Reddit revenge stories, pro revenge stories, and unbelievable karma stories. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done if your commander left you paying for stolen equipment? Trust me, the next story is even crazier, so stay tuned.